Okay, Jim, I'm ready. So we start.
We start like this.
Yeah.
Today, I just wanted to have some old photos. Some of these are from the 1980s. And I like to just kind of go through these photos and tell a little story. All these things I talk much about inside the saga itself. So these are physical places, physical people that are inside the saga. Yeah, I don't know really where we go with this. I just needed to show these pictures and explain what they are, and so maybe we can do these. There's a ring of sounds we'll do another day, what we base this saga on. But these are places and people from a small little country called Finland. It's between a great power, Sweden, and Russia. It's a small country. And that's where the story comes from. It comes from one family called the Bock family, B-O-C-K or B-U-C-K in root language. And yeah, we'll just explain what these pictures. Some of them are not in very good condition. They're very old. But they all have much meaning in this story, because the story is the story, but also the story has physical places where there are things buried in Finland. There's actual places that have much interest about where this story is based around. So I can start to explain what these photos are. We can go one at a time here. This is a very low budget situation here. This is a picture of Bock, and was my mentor. He's passed away now, 2 years ago. He was the last member of this family. This photo here is when I first met him, about 1986 or 87. Later on, he became gray and much more, but this is what he looked like when I first met him. And I first heard the saga. I first heard the story in the winter of 1985 from one friend of mine. Had one cassette tape, and this friend of mine, I have some pictures of some drawings he was making, some rings, and in these rings it showed where our alphabet, where it comes from. Why does an A look like an A? Why does a B look like a B? Why does a 4 look like a 4? So we had this, my friend was drawing these rings, and he said, "Would you like to hear a story?" I said, "Sure." So anyway, I listened to this tape, and I listened to it, 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 again and again and again. And each time I listened to the tape, I heard more things that I had been looking for my whole life, answers to questions that seemed like no one had those answers. My name is Jim Chesnar. I'm from America. Not so proud to say so, but anyway, that's where I come from. And I don't know, I was born in the States. I was raised in the South, and I was born a Baptist. From the Baptist, I couldn't find the answers that I was looking for. Later on, went to a Catholic boarding school. They had no answers. I went to a Jewish summer camp for a few years, and the Jewish people didn't have the answers. And later in my life, I went to the Muslims. I spent much time with Muslims in Morocco, India, and they didn't have the answers to those questions either. I spent much time in India with the Babas, the Sadhus, traveling around listening to the Hindu philosophy, which was closer to what I was feeling, but they didn't have those answers for those questions either. I spent much time with the Buddhists in Thailand, and they were quite close to where I was looking for, but they also didn't have those answers. There's 4 questions that I needed to know about. It seems like most people are really stuck in the material world. They never really have time to look into deeper things of the meanings of these 4 questions. And I'll give these 4 questions and what I was looking for in my life. But they're ancient questions, been millions and millions and millions and millions of human beings ask these same questions. You probably get millions and millions of answers, but I listened to their answers and none of them made a logic, and I needed some kind of logic about these things. There's a word called believe, and there's a word called understand. And many people believe in this and believe in this and believe in this, and a belief you can change from day to day. I can believe in Jesus today, I can believe in the Buddha tomorrow, I can believe in Krishna the next day. You can change a belief. But an understanding you cannot change. An understanding you can add to an understanding, but you cannot change an understanding. And maybe one example I'll give for this is the first question is, where is this life coming from? Who's making up this thing we call life? What is the source of all that we know today? And you can ask 1,000 people, professors, doctors, professional people who, theologians, and they'll give all kinds of answers. The Great Spirit, the cosmos, the God, many different answers to where does it all come from. But in one simple logic, which I look for, I'm not a very educated person, it all goes to the sun. And the sun we call Sulin, and what we call the root language, which is the first language on the planet. And the second language on the planet we call Van language, which they call it Aurinko, which is the Finnish language itself. In English we call it sun. But if a 7-year-old boy comes to me and says, Jim, who's making up this life? Where does these trees come from? Where does the ocean? Where does this stick come from? I simply say the sun. If the sun doesn't shine, there's no light, there's no life, there's nothing, there's no consciousness, it's absolute black darkness. The moon gets its light from the sun, according to this story. Mars, Jupiter, Venus, these all get their lights from the sun. And this earth, everything we see here, these plants, this stick, me, this camera, everything is made from the sun. If the sun doesn't shine, there is no movie going on, there is no life, there is no light. Every conscious thought is only here because the sun shines. If the sun didn't shine, there would be no light, no conscious, no nothing. And the small boy can understand, if the sun doesn't shine, there's nothing. So, in this understanding that the sun is the source of all that we know, even in our story, the stars are reflections of the sun. There's only one sun, there's only one moon, there's only one planet, and there's millions and millions of stars, according to this, which I'll explain in the Saga. It's also where the word discussion comes from. The sun is one discus. We can also discuss this discus. And S-I-O-N, Sion, discussion. Sion also means the sun, Sion, sun, sun. So I like to discuss the sun, this discus, in one discussion. And that's what I'll be doing in the Saga, because this story is based from the sun. We have much feeling for the sun and the moon because these two are what control everything that we know. Our gravity, our water, everything. Without the sun, there is nothing. And in our story, there is nobody who made the sun. There's not some what we would call one God who lives in the space somewhere out there who made the sun on the first day. This is one belief. In reality, anyone can understand, a small boy can understand that if the sun doesn't shine. In our story, the sun has always been, the sun will always be. It's not a star, it's really the source, it's our soul. Our soul comes from the solar. So in the sense that where does it come from, this is the first question that I had to answer, is where does the life come from? And I didn't know this answer. I could not answer this until Mr. Bock told me this. And like I said, I can ask 1,000 people where the life comes from, and maybe not even one would straight away say the sun. The second question I need to know is, who am I? Who are we? Who are we? Who am I? The third question I need to know the answer to is why. Why are we here? Why am I here? Why is all this here? And the fourth question, the last question, is when this body, when it dies and when it's gone, is there something? Is there a soul? Is there a spirit? Is there something, and what happens to this? So where do we come from? Where do we go? Who are we and why are we here? And in this saga, all these answers were answered for me in one logic, not really so much one belief. I understand it. This whole story is based in one linguistic. It's all based in one sound system. And when you hear the saga and you go into the sounds of the meaning, which I'll explain another day, you can start to put together all the answers to these four questions in one logic, not just in one belief system. Today, I guess we talk about some pictures here. Very, very terrible conditioning. I've been carrying it around for a long time. This picture here is of, there's 7 islands that this story has much to do with. And these 7 islands are just maybe 3 kilometers in front of Helsinki, Finland. If you went to Helsinki, Finland, if you went to the marketplace, you can take one boat that goes out to these 7 islands. This is a picture of Helsinki here. These are all wrinkles from being folded. And these are these 7 islands. Today there's only 6. They put 2 of them together, but originally there was 7 islands in front of Helsinki, and there's 7 hills in Helsinki. This island here has one castle. It was built by a man called Arensford back in the 18th century, 1750, I think he started it. And it's called Sveaborg, or Svea is Sweden and Borg means castle. In the Finnish language it's called Suomenlinna. And Lina means castle and Suomi means Finland. So it's the castle of Sweden, or the Finnish castle. And in the center of this island there is one hill. And this hill is still there today. You can go to this hill. And on top of this hill is one museum they built by the Russians in the end of the 19th century. But this whole story is based around this center point in this island. It's a place we call Valhalla. And Valhalla, for the Vikings, for the Swedish mythologies, is a place where all the soul goes to. It's like their version of what we, the Christians, would call heaven. And in this story, this island at one time was the very North Pole. And still today, the actual pole axle of the planet is still based in this hill, in the top of this hill. It's actually this island here. I was pointing this island here. I'm upside down today. There's a church here, I think called Alexander Nevsky Church. And this hill where this North Pole is, the hill in the Swedish language, or root language, we call Lyssnarberget. In the Finnish language, we call it Kuuntelavori. And in English, we call it the Nars Listening Hill. And in the saga, I'll explain who the Nars are, what they're listening to, this whole situation. But anyway, according to this story, the true North Pole, not the top of the planet, not where the ice is on top, but the true, if you went to the top of the true axle of the planet. Today we sit like this. We're not sitting on the top like this in this point, and we spin like this. If you go to the actual true North Pole of the, it's on this island right here. And in the top of this pole, there is one hole in the bedrock, in the granite. It's still there today. They have it covered up, but it would be very easy to take some wood up and show where this story is based out of, because this story says that everything, the whole human race came out from this island, from this situation, which I'll explain in the story. This is the absolute, and if you went straight up from here into the space, you'll come to the North Star. So the North Star is based on top of this axle of the planet. It's the pole star, the Polaris. There's much to be said about this. My friend Eeyore, this was his workplace. He gave beautiful stories of 18th century, how we lived in the 18th century. In his life, he was a freelance tour guide. People came from all over the planet to listen to him give stories about mostly how Sweden, Russia, and Finland, how they were living back in these times. And this place here would maybe be the easiest physical place to show. Today there's one museum. If you go inside this museum, you can go up to, I think, the 3rd floor. And there's a round room. And there in the middle of this round room, if you stand, you can put 1 foot here and 1 foot here. And you have 1 foot in the east and 1 foot in the west. This is the old, what we would call the meridian or the meridian line. I think in the 17th, 18th century they moved this meridian line to England, and that's what we call Greenwich today. Before, the original line left from this hole and came straight south. It came down, divided Crete or Creta in Greece. It divided it in half, so you'll see one line on the map. It goes right through the middle of Crete. So Crete was actually the division. This line continues, goes around, and comes up through Hawaii on the other side of the planet, and then back to here from the backside. If you come from this way to this way, you'd make another line that goes around the planet, and it divides the planet into 4 hemispheres or 4 pieces. And those 4 hemispheres, the 4 corners of the world, they meet at this hole in the top of the pole of the planet, which I will explain in much more detail inside the saga. Anyway, this is Helsinki, and this is just 3 kilometers in front. I've been here many times to this island. And like I said, in the saga, I'll give much more detail about what this place is. And there's other people inside the story who can even tell more than I can. So we're going to go on from this picture. In Finland, there's 4 places or 5 places that there's actually physical things buried that are part of this saga. Today, the Finnish government, they've not been much of a help for us. Over when Eeyore was alive, the newspapers were very hard on Eeyore because he had some information that nobody else had. They really wouldn't help us. They only really gave him negative. And I feel much feeling about this establishment and how they would not listen to anything he had to say. They would not even go try to. If you go about 30 kilometers to the east of Helsinki, there's a small place where his parents lived in the last years of their life. In this place, in the Swedish language, the root language, we call it Gumbustrand. The word gum comes from the word guma, which means old woman. Bu means one nest. One bird has one bu. Gumbustrand means beach, so it was called the old woman's beach nest. In the Finnish language, we call it Akanpesaranta. And Aka means old woman. Pesa means nest, and Ranta means beach. The old woman's beach nest. And in English, it's old woman's beach nest. And this story is based around one all-mother and all-father of the planet. And this Guma, she's called Akka in Finnish language, Guma in root language, and in English we call her Ella. And this whole place And in this place called Akanpezaranta, these people had built one storehouse, one temple, the oldest temple in the planet. And the temple is called the Lemminkainen Temple. We'll start with this one. This is what it looks like today. This was all covered in the year 987. This temple is, I'll go into more detail in the saga. I'm not going to explain so much what it is or what it was inside of it today. But this is one picture. This big stone here is put here by man. This is called one H264. And this is where the highest woman, the Guma, or the Aka, or the Ella, this is where she went to H264. And in the saga, I'll explain what H264 means. This stone here, we call sundial stone, because they had one sundial. They had a ring with a pole in the middle, and the sun could cast a shadow until what time it was. This hill here is called Pelivori. It's one natural stone hill, one granite hill. This is natural. But this stone here and this stone here were actually put here by human beings. And these stones are much, much bigger than almost any kind of Stonehenge or anything like that. They're very, very huge stones. These two people standing here, they're standing in the entranceway to the Lemminkainen Temple. You can see there's one walkway going down, all granite. And now there's one cave entrance. And we're about maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 meters inside. We've taken out all this stone, which I'll maybe explain another time. But this temple and what is inside this temple is from a time we have no idea the human being was even living. It's the time we call the Paradis, or in English we call it the paradise. And Per is our father. We're all sons and daughters of Per. We're Per's sons. He's our parent. We come from his sperma. So for us in our story, Per is father. Ra is his son. Ra is the king. Ra is making the Ras, the race of people. So Para, the two, the father and the son. Paradi, D means to drink. And S is the sun in our sound system. So the Paradis is the father and his son, they D, the son. And the son, I'll explain this later on because this is a very touchy subject. In 1987, myself and a group of friends from around the planet, we all met at this place, this hill, 30 kilometers to the east of Helsinki. And Mr. Bock, Eeyore Bock, he started to tell one story. He kept adding information. Every year he would add more and more information to the story. So the story kept growing bigger and bigger and bigger. But he explained that his family had closed this temple up. They had sealed it up. They'd put stones, mud, all kinds of stuff. And they had sealed this temple in the year 987. This is 1987 when we start to come here, so it had been 1,000 years that this temple had been closed. And the reason that it was closed is because these people, in the root language, we call them hedning. In the Van language, the Finnish language, we call them paakana. And in the English, we call them pagan. So this story comes from a time we call pagan times, or the times before the church, before the three religions we know. And in the pagan times, people lived according to mythology. The Greek mythology, the Roman mythology, the Red Indian has his mythology, the Hindu has his mythology, the Scandinavians have their mythology. So before the whole planet lived according to one word called mythology or mythology. Myth is one story, and logi means logic. So it's one story with logic, myth, logi, mythology, mythology, ology. And in this story, it's said that this Greek Orthodox Church had traveled up from Constantinople via this old Greek empire, and he come to the doorway of Russia in 987. And now the pagan people of Russia, the shamans, the shamani, the people who lived according to nature, not according to the new concept of the god, this man who has the white beard who lives up there somewhere. So 987, this family, they realized that this church was coming, and they didn't want the church to find what was inside this temple. So they sealed it up. A few years later, the Roman Catholic, they're coming the other direction. They're coming up from England, Germany, Belgium, Holland, and they come to the door of the Sweden in 1007, 1008. So now between the Sweden and the Russia, between the Greek Orthodox coming up one way and the Roman Catholics with this Jesus story, this small little country, Finland, who is the head of the whole pagandom of the planet. They sealed this temple up, and they put many, many big stones. They put sand. I was the one who first put the first shovel. I was there for 4 years digging as we went inside, or as we got to where we are today. And it's said that the member of this family, this Bock family, that was alive in 1,000 years, this last male member, he should be the one who opened this temple and show it to the planet, because inside is the history of the whole human race from the beginning. 1987, July 19th, 17th, 19th, somewhere there, I put the first shovel in and we started to dig. We thought we were going to go straight in, but we didn't. We took out much sand, and we came down and down and down. And then we came to these three granite slabs, perfectly rectangular slabs, 4 meters across by 8 or 10 meters long, maybe a little bit bigger than that. And these granite slabs, completely unnatural, because this whole place is completely nature. We came to one place after we took the sand. We started the dig right up here. We came down with this sand, and these slabs were put in front of where this opening is. And I was washing down this floor one day with one high pressure hose, and there was one seam that made from this kind of cement they call rapakivi. It's a natural kind of a rock and mud that they have in Finland. And there was a seam that was covered with this, and as this high pressure hose, this seam started to fly away, and underneath it was a straight line, just absolutely straight, going 6 or 8 meters long. And when we came to the end, there was another seam, and we took it, and in the end there was this completely rectangular stone put into the bottom of this hole. And there we got one man from Finland, the #1 drilling expert of all Finland. His name is H264. Very well respected. He worked for a big company called Lemminkainen Oy, or Lemminkainen Company. They were the largest construction company in Finland. And this Mr. Hakulinen, he looked at this stone and he said, "This is something very funny about this. You cannot make a straight, a rectangular." So now we stopped to dig. I was called the digging master #1, but now we come to the real worker, the guy, he's called the drilling master. This is Mr. Hakulinen. He brings out some drills, because that's what he does. He drills through granite. He's the bedrock. And he starts to drill. I'm standing right next to him, and he starts to drill down a hole into this bedrock, into this granite. And when he comes about 1.5 meters, it just goes into something soft. And I'll never forget the way he looked at me like, this stone is not natural. This is put here. There's something between. So now he finished drilling some holes, and now we had brought in some heavy equipment to try to bring this thing out, but there was no way we could pull this stone out. It had been there for 1,000 years. So he brought the dynamite, and we put the dynamite, he put the dynamite, and he blew this big rectangular stone. And underneath was another one, exactly the same, another rectangular stone. And in between there was this stuff called rapakivi, a layer of this. They had settled it down. And he drilled out the second stone. Boom. And we had one guy called Asa. I can't remember Asa's last name, but a really nice fellow with a little bobcat machine. And he would take the stone, push it out, take it up the hill, push it out. And then there was one more stone. There were 3 of these stones, completely rectangular, stacked on top of each other. And now he drilled. We blew it out, and this next year we took all this 3 granite. And then we drilled one more time. And we didn't know, but anyway, it didn't. We blew part of the bedrock away, which we felt bad for, but there was really no way we could tell what was inside this thing. So there was only 3 stones. There are some diagrams maybe on the internet somewhere. There are some diagrams of these 3 stones which block the entrance to this, where this hole is here. So now we've taken all this stone out, and we're looking down, and the story says that the entrance to the temple is where the highest woman on the planet, when she went H264, which I'll explain in the saga, she would fall in front of the door to the temple. No woman has ever been inside this temple. The whole surroundings, the whole hill, the hallway to the beach, everything is named for woman. But the woman, she never went in because it's his story. It was his story. It was a man's story inside this temple. When we got to this point here, we come to another stone here. I don't know if you can really see. We'll try to get a picture of it. This is Mr. Hakulinen. And now this is him with his, for drilling. And now in the entrance, this, where the cave entrance is, was this stone here. And you can see it's put in there, in this seam that goes around was this rapakivi, this clay. I don't know how good we're going to get this to come out. It's an old picture. And so now here he is, he's drilling. I actually helped drill one of these holes. And now he drilled holes into this, and as he came through, I'm not sure how far it was. It might have been like 2 meters, 3 meters. These drills, and then this drill did the same thing that the one did. So he knew that this stone was not natural. This stone was pushed into the entrance of this cave. He put dynamite in this, and there was a big explosion. And now he blew this stone out. And here's a picture of Eeyore and my friend here standing with this stone here blown away. And this is the entrance to the temple itself. Behind this stone was one more large stone, not quite as big as this one. They blew it out, and it kept going back, and there's a beautiful granite ceiling, a beautiful granite floor. And now we come to these walls and walls and walls of just big stones, packed in with this clay, this rapakivi. And he started to drill, and we made many explosions. And we kept taking out this filler, this stuff that they filled this cave with. And this little bobcat machine would take and push all these stones out, and trucks would take them away. At this point, we had the backing. The first year was my money. who started this thing. I had brought some $2,000. I borrowed some money and I put maybe $13,000 in the dig. But when we started to have these machines and stuff, the expenses started to come very much at this point. Then we had one bank in the area of places called Cebu or Cibo. And now this bank, they financed the next years as we went in, as we kept taking the stone out. These are some more photos from that time. This was in my younger days. This is 1987, 88, so we're in 2014 now. This is one photo here of me pointing down towards the temple. This is another photo of this big H264 stone with this cave behind it. Quite a nice picture here. This is a picture of Eeyore making one interview inside as we blew out these first two stones. Eeyore is explaining to these film crew where we're going and what we're doing. There's another photo of a friend who's taking some of the stones out. Inside this temple there is one water lock, there's one plug. And when these people were using the temple, they kept the plug out and the rainwater would just go through and go out into the bay, which is just a few hundred meters away. But when they weren't using the temple, they put the plug in and the whole thing filled up with water, which it is today. We haven't come to this plug yet. We're waiting to come to this plug, and when we get to it, another picture of this stone, H264 stone with the sundial stone next to it. This is a photo from a little bit of a distance away. Today they had to build a fence around it, but this is much how it looks with this H264 stone being back here. This picture here is from, looks like 1990. This is the last year that we were working there, and now it's full of water. This water level comes up to here, and so we have to pump the water out to go into the cave. There may be some people up there now pumping the water out to try to take some, they have a machine that can look through the rock to see which way we go. And this is a picture from 1990 from inside when it's snowing. This is looking back out the hole. This cave is going down and around inside to the hill. We had the backing of this bank called Cebu Spar Bank for some years, and then they got too big a project for them to handle. And now this company called Lemonkainen Oy, or in Lemonkainen Company, of Mr. Heikki Pentti, very nice guy. I think he's passed away now. He started to support us, and he brought out some heavy equipment, and we kept continuing each summer. The group of us, we would come and we would continue this exploding these stones and taking these stones out. There's a perfect granite ceiling going down, a perfect granite floor. They came to one point there in the 1987, I think, that we found one inscription on the side of one of the walls. It was like a checkerboard. It was 5 by 8, and they call this one Hellristring. And at this point we were supposed to call the Finnish museum Museo Rasta, because when you find some kind of what you think an old human-made thing, the museum has to come, and they came out, they looked at it, they said, nah, nothing. So we got to continue to dig ourselves. And that's about what I will say about the temple today. So this temple, there's a very, very big story. Maybe we go another day into what this temple is and what's inside this temple, but those were just some photos of the excavation, the excavation of this cave. X is the oak tree itself, so it's the temple of the oak. And oak was our family trees from before. And the Allfather, he was the head of the oak. If you go about 80 kilometers to the west of Helsinki, Finland today, still in a place called Uudenmaa, you will come to one small place called Snappertuna, or called Tuna. And in this Snappertuna there is one castle, one ruin to one castle. called Rasaburg or Rasapuri. Ra is the king, Ras is the race, Rasa, Rase. Puri means castle. In the Van language, Pu means a tree, and Ri means again, so you re the Puri. So this castle is called Raseburg or Rasepuri. Ra is because this is where the king and the queen of Finland, this is the king and the queen of actually the planet. This is where the race of human beings are coming out from. Ra is the king, he's making the Ras. Ra represents the moon. And this ruin of this castle, these foundation stones are from 9,030 years ago. And in the Saga I'll explain when they came and rebuilt this. It had towers, the King Tower, the Queen Tower. The big tower is called Rabel Tower. Around this castle was a lake before. This man standing here, he's making the field, but this was all one lake, and in the middle of the lake was this granite stone. There was cast there from the beginning of the planet, from granite. And on top they built this castle, and around this castle was a lake with beautiful swans swimming around. And this castle was covered with a white, not marble, but a white chalky kind of stuff. So this was a white castle in the middle of a lake. And in the story, this is the castle of the Aser. This is the sound A, Bay. Bay means Bori, or castle. And in this story, I'll explain something called Yehovah. It was one system we had from before. And this castle is the Hove. Hove means the court. The sound Ah is the Aser, and Ye means to give. So we were giving to the Hove, to the court of the Aser. It was one giving system, which has much to do with this temple and the storehouse below the temple. In 1050, on the 24th of July, in the year 1050, the Vatican sent 30,000 mercenary army paid from the Vatican to come kill everybody in South Finland. And this army came and they destroyed this castle. Today it's one ruin, but today before it had towers. It's not one castle made for defense. It was one castle made for baptism. Before we had a different baptism system than we have today. In Finnish language, the word kaste means to baptize. You kaste. And if you put L on the kaste, you come with the word kastel, or castle. So the castle was one place of baptism before we had a different system for baptism. I'll explain. It's a very beautiful place. We've been here many, many times. It's not so far from the coast. Rasaburg, Rasapuri, Rasaburg, the oldest castle on the planet. This is the oldest castle on the planet, 9,030 years old. And maybe the last photo I put today, and this is a picture of the Allfather. We call him, in root language, we call him Gube. In the Finnish language, we call him Ukko. The highest woman is Akka. He is called Ukko. And this instrument that he's playing, this string instrument, is called one kantele. This is one of the first instruments, music instruments on the planet, from the harp. This beautiful little girl at the bottom, she is called Maya. And this is the young Maya. She is going to be the queen. Maya is the queen in our story. Her brother Ra, or heirs, is the king. And this man here is the Allfather. He's dressed here in his reindeer. He has a red hat, like Santa Claus, like Marita. And this Maya, she represents the moon. He represents the sun. And we call him in English pair. And we're all sons of pair. We're pair sons, pair sons. This was one artist that knew this Bock family, and he took some of the information that they gave, and he made many, many beautiful paintings. And these are basically the pictures that I have today. There are many, many pictures in the internet of Eeyore, the temple digging, There's interviews with Eeyore, other people. In 1990, some people had brought a little too much hash up to Finland. They started to sell it, and they stopped the excavation. The police came. So it has not been much done since 1990. Yeah, I don't know where we really go from here today. I think that I would just say maybe that this saga, it comes from a time when the human being, we respected the nature. The human being understood there is no other place for us to go. This planet Earth, I'll explain in the saga about how this planet came into existence. It's a very special creation, created by the sun. And everything we see on this planet is created from the sun. The cameras are made by the sun. This little dog here is created from the sun. And in these days, the people would do nothing to hurt our Mother Earth. We put the Mother Earth above our own desires, our own wants. We wanted this planet to be pristine. We wanted it to be in a completely natural state, so the children in the future didn't have to clean up the mess or live through the mess that one generation where we are today. There is no other planet up there. There is no other place for us to go. This is home. It's a beautiful ball covered with beautiful trees and nature and water. And up to just a few hundred years ago, there was no pollution really on this planet. So I hope that out of this story, I hope that the people on this earth, we all lived according to one mythology. We lived according to nature. We felt like the nature was our example, how we should be. If we could live like the nature, because the nature is perfect. I can't improve the nature. And I hope that one day that the human being, we can live one life again on this ball, where we don't destroy it for the children who come after us. We respect the bedrock. We don't blow our mountains away. We respect our oceans, our rivers. We respect our air again. The pagan people before, they didn't hurt the earth. They knew that this would be for their children, and children's children had to come. Just a few hundred years ago, it was nature. And maybe somehow we can return to some kind of a nature life. It seems like maybe this technology, as wonderful as it is, maybe as necessary as it is today, it's not helping our earth at all. And we only have one mother. And in the saga, I'll explain about how people lived when they did respect the earth, not so long ago. And maybe that's it for today. We'll do one with some sounds, a ring of sounds, how we base this story, and one linguistic. This planet is one ball, and in the middle of the ball is one lance. And today we're tilted over, we're out of balance. The story does have a little future to it. It says we're getting ready to tilt back up, and we'll be in balance again. We'll be in harmony with the moon. It's a very, very, very big story, but it can be understood by a 7-year-old child. It's that simple. And if you want to go into it very, very detailed, it can go as complex as you want to. But when I tell the saga in a few days, the people who will be in the audience, for me, they're all 7-year-old people. I will tell it like a child can understand it. There's one sun, there's one moon, there's one planet, and there's millions and millions of stars.